If it feels like the Toyota Land Cruiser has been around forever, that's because it has. Toyota's been cranking these things out since 1957. And lately, it seems like this latest generation has been here for quite some time. It's remained unchanged for a bit. Over the years, it's gotten a bit fatter, quite a bit bigger from the original, but it still lives by the same old Land Cruiser ethos from which the first one was created. I'm here in a pretty simple off-road park. I think I just crunched a rock, but there are skid plates everywhere, so that's good. So what's new with the Land Cruiser? Nothing really. I wanted to take a look at it to see what all the hype is about because I haven't driven one in a very long time, but it feels the same. Up front is a 5.7-liter aluminum V8 engine that's making 381 horsepower and just over 400 pound-feet of torque. Most of that torque, 90% of it, is available from 2200 RPM onward. It's backed up by an 8-speed gearbox, which you can shift yourself down here by the gear shift lever. Now, that's not all there is to this, and that shouldn't be all there is to this, because the thing that's going to stand out to you right away is the price tag. Let's get that out of the way right now as I make a turn up this hill. This thing costs $90,000. There's one option. It's the rear entertainment pack, which adds the pair of TVs and an HDMI input so you can keep your kids from screaming at you. That's it. It's $90,000. Now, why does it cost so much? Here's why. This thing can go anywhere. It can literally cruise the land. A good way to imagine this vehicle is, say you go to the gym. There's always that old guy on the basketball court who just keeps to himself and shoots free throw after free throw and never seems to miss. One day, you go and chat him up. Hey, old man, let's do a friendly game of one-on-one. You play, and he whoops your ass. Come to find out, he played point guard for UNC back in the 70s. That's kind of what the Land Cruiser's like. It's the old man that can still kick your ass. It's big, though, and it is luxurious inside. This thing could have a Lexus badge, and there is a Lexus version, but you don't really need the Lexus version unless you just want the badge. This one is really nice. These leather seats are very comfortable. They're heated and cooled. There's tons of adjustability. There's, I think, 24 vents to filter the climate control system throughout this thing. There's a 14-speaker JBL Synthesis sound system, which sounds great. And then there's all the off-road hardware, which is why this thing costs what it costs. There are crawl modes, hill descent control. There's a center locking differential. It's a torsion limited slip. It's always in 4 high. You can put it into 4 low and do your thing. And when you get into 4 low, there are different drive modes. One of the neat ones I like is this. This already has a fairly tight turning radius for what seems like a fairly large vehicle. You can maneuver this thing around town, no problem. But when you're in 4 low and you have crawl mode on, you hit this other button which has a little turning thing. And what it does is helps to make the turning radius a bit smaller by dragging the brake on the inside wheel of the direction you're turning to tighten up the turning circle. It's a neat little trick to make the footprint of this vehicle smaller than it actually is. Like I said, it drives smaller than you think. When you first get into it and the first few days of driving it, yeah, it's a big vehicle. I mean, you know, I drive a lot of smaller vehicles than this one, even though lately I've been driving some big stuff for Truck Central. As you drive it, though, it seems to shrink in size. I took my wife and daughter to Big Bear for the weekend, and we drove this up. I'd never driven to Big Bear before, and the road up and the road down is awesome if you're in, say, a 911 or an Audi TT-RS. That's because there was no snow on the ground. It was dry. We just went up for the weekend to kind of get away. I had people getting out of my way as I was going up the hill because they were going too slow, and my family was comfortable in the Land Cruiser. On the way down the hill, it seems that everybody forgets that their brakes can fade and their gearbox could be handling a lot of the load. Not myself. I was bouncing between second, third, and occasionally fourth on the way downhill, staying off the brakes. And again, people had to get the hell out of my way. One of the reasons why this was so comfortable, cruising at the speed limit or a little bit above on such a curvy road, is, I'm watching this rock, is because this has a hydraulic roll control thing, much like the new Infiniti QX80 has and much like McLaren's have. So it helps mitigate up to 50% of the body roll through hydraulic actuation side to side, keeping you and your passengers more comfortable. So this can be the $90,000 about town fancy vehicle that doesn't get shouty like maybe a Range Rover is in your face with its luxuriousness, even though Range Rovers are relatively subtle thanks to their British charm and styling. But this still is not a Lexus. This is not the new Lamborghini Urus, obviously. This isn't as loud as some of the trail walkers, like a fully kitted out Jeep Wrangler with all of its lights and all the other stuff that people are going to throw at it. You show up to this in the trail, and you could show up in a completely stock one because it has great suspension setup. It has that center locking differential. It has sidewall, glorious sidewall on the tires. And you can run most of what everybody else is going to run. There's a reason this vehicle has been around forever. There's a reason why it's called the Land Cruiser. The overlanding folks love these things, mostly because it gives them an excuse to spend even more money, which is something they love to do, but because it's a great platform to start with for a vehicle that can go anywhere. Do you want to run from Alaska to the tip of South America? Land Cruiser is a pretty good choice. And that's also because it's a Toyota. So if something breaks, you can fix it with duct tape and a trip to Walmart. Zip ties too, probably a good idea. The on-road manners though, this thing is very comfortable. If I were in the market for such a vehicle, it'd be hard to overlook the Land Cruiser. I mean, when you're spending this much money on an SUV, most of the time it's for status reasons. There's a reason why they have a full-size Range Rover and then the Range Rover Sport is because people want the styling, even though everybody should drive the full-size one because it's better. That's just personal opinion, but I'm also right. But with the Land Cruiser, you're foregoing the badge snobbery. You're buying this because you know it's something special. Now, it is dated. It feels like an older Toyota product in here. The graphical display is not befitting of a $90,000 vehicle. Everything works fine. It's just, for $90,000, there should be a little bit more luxury in here. But again, I'm satisfied as it sits because it's so capable. Its capability is why it costs $90,000. There are cameras too, so when you're here and you need to back up, pop that open. You can see where you're moving your rig around. There's also this other button if you're going slow enough to get a different view. So now I can see what's going on in front of me. Change it a little bit. You can put the lines up or not. Put it on auto. And you can see rocks in front of you. You can see what you're about to hit or miss. Skid plates keep everything protected up front, underneath. So basically, this thing can just go anywhere and do anything. And it's amazing for such a big machine on the outside that it can do that. Some of you might still be balking at the price tag. This is like a Range Rover that seats 8 people, and it costs a lot less. Is the Range Rover nicer on the outside? Sure, the styling's better. This feels like slightly bloated. Back to that old man in the gym, he's packed on a few pounds, but underneath that is all the muscle. The old man's strength is hiding just under the skin. And that's part of the reason why I love the Land Cruiser. It just blends in around town. And if you want to show up with it absolutely covered in mud, some people will be like, wow, what is that guy doing to his vehicle? But those who know, those who actually take their vehicles off-road will look, and it's like that gif where the guy gives the knowing nod and the glance. That's what the Land Rover is. It's a knowing nod and glance to those who understand what it means to be a capable vehicle right from the factory. There doesn't need to be a TRD Pro version of this, like with the Tacoma and the 4Runner and the Tundra, because this is the TRD Pro version. If they made a TRD Pro version, it'd be wild, but it would also take away some of that luxuriousness that Land Cruiser customers want. So as it sits, Yeah, $90,000 is a lot of money, but you're getting a hell of a lot of truck. Another reason to love this vehicle and get a sense of how luxurious it is, even though it's dated, is how smooth it is, and it's quiet inside. I actually took my mic off so you can get a sense of how quiet it is. This audio is just the GoPro. Now, GoPro audio isn't great, especially in the case I'm using, but you can hear me, and you can get a sense of just the engine. It doesn't lurch forward like, you know, some V8s. This just kind of rolls forward. It's very Lexus-like. It's very smooth, and that's another air of the luxuriousness that you get in the Land Cruiser. That's also really good off-road, so you're not just, you know, jerking with the pedal. I'm just stabbing the pedal, and it's not like, if I was in a Raptor, I'd be like, and it works for the Raptor because it fits that personality, and I love the Raptor. But the smoothness of the Land Cruiser on-road is a comfort thing. Off-road is just a better experience thing. It's a really good vehicle.